been interrupted by our friends, the Houthis from Yemen. Baruch Hashem, we can resume and get back where we wanted to be. This is the Web Yeshiva. I'm Stuart Fischman. We're going to talk about Yachatz from the Seder, the breaking of the matzah. And most of us, maybe all of us, know this song that kids learn in kindergarten and first grade about how to run a Seder. All right, so that's as far as we're getting tonight. Next week we'll go to Rachza. Let's start it again. There, Yachatz. They break the matzah in half. Right? Break the matzah. Why are we breaking the matzah? And when do we break the matzah? So when we break the matzah, we all know from the song, Kadesh Orchatz Karpas Yachatz, right? Kadesh Orchatz Karpas Yachatz. It's step number 4. This idea of breaking up the Seder into steps is a very, very old custom. And there is a Haggadah, which if you're interested in Haggadahs, it's a very good Haggadah. It's called the Haggadah Shlema from Rav Menachem Kasher Zatzal. He was a huge Talmid Chacham, had like this encyclopedic grasp of everything. He started a project called Torah Shlema. Every single commentary on the entire Torah, it went to, I think he was Nifter in the beginning of Sefer by Midbar. He didn't live to finish the project. It's an amazing project. It's called Torah Shlema. He also wrote a Haggadah called the Haggadah Shlema. This is it. Okay. How many pages is it? It's about 200 some, about 300 some odd pages. He goes through everything. And so since he can go through everything, he goes through the order, this idea of Karpas, Kadesh Orchatz, Karpas Yachatz. And this is what he has to say on it. It's called, this is chapter 16 of his Haggadah. Let you know how much detail it has. This is chapter 16. Simanei HaSeder. Shatu Chachamav Tekanas Baal Bayis Baal Orchas Seder Pesach Sheishem Galat Hamei Seish Gvov Seinu. The Gemara tells us how to make a Seder, but not everybody's capable of learning Arvei Psachim. So the sages decided, no, we're going to give you like a checklist and can put it to music, like we just saw. And the one that's most famous, Simana Shigor B'Yoter, Gambim Hagei Teman, Gam Sfarim, and it's all over. Temanim have it, Sfaradim have it, Italian Jews had it, Kadesh Orchatz. He writes, Yesh Machas Metal Rashi. It's a legend that Rashi composed this. Shadal was Shmuel David Lutzato. He was an Italian Talmid Chacham in the 19th century who wrote on many, many subjects. Matzah Ktav Yad Mishnat Reshiyot Zayin, which would be 1457, Chami Tamidei Maharil. So a student of Maharil, who was the great Ashkenazi authority in the 14th century, had a student who said that, of course, as far as he can tell, it was this Seder was composed by Rabbi Shmuel Mipalaiza. So Yachatz is step 4 of the Seder. Okay, so if you make Kiddush, you do a Tatidayim, you eat a vegetable, you break the matzah in half. Now, why are we breaking the matzah in half? It's a very fair question. And that comes from a Gemara. And it's a Gemara in Masechet Psachim. And did I load it? You know that the Houthim with their missiles just threw me off my rhythm. So now I have to find those pages again. So any delays today are because of the Houthis and their missiles. So it's on Kuftet Vav Amid Bet, Kuftet Zayin. There's Kuftet Vav. Okay, get to Kuftet Zayin. Where's Kuftet? I'm really sorry for this. But I had all my pages lined up in order, and the Houthis shot a missile at us. All right, so there's Gemara Pesachim. And this Gemara is based on a pasuk which we're going to have to really talk about tonight. The mitzvah of eating matzah is in Parshas Bo, Yitziat Mitzrayim, and it's repeated in Parshas Re'eh, where there's a review of the Chagim. Shemot Chodesh Aviv, Asita Pesach Shemokecha, Ki B'chodesh Aviv Yotzech Shemokecha Mitzrayim. Observe the month of the spring, which tells us how our calendar is based to be. And we have a monthly calendar that still keeps the seasons. So that's why our calendar is a combination of lunar and solar, and we have leap years with extra months. This way Pesach is always in the Aviv, which is its own subject. We're not talking about the calendar tonight. So Shema Chodesh Aviv, and what are you doing Chodesh Aviv? You have to bring a korban Pesach, okay? Zvachta Pesach Hashem Elkecha. You should not have any chametz when you have the korban Pesach. For 7 days you eat matzot, unleavened bread, lechem oni, which we have to define. Lechem oni. Okay? It's lechem oni, and you're going to. Why do you eat lechem oni? Because Hashem says you left Egypt in a hurry. That's in Parshat Bo. There's Makat Bechorot at midnight. The Egyptians chased us out, and there was no time for the dough to rise, right? We left in a hurry. And why are we doing this? Said, you shall remember that your departure from Egypt forever. Okay, so first of all, we have to understand, what does Lechem Oni mean? And the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim has a few ideas. What is the Torah trying to teach us when this matzah is called Lechem Oni? And now we're going to see the Gemara, and I'm sure I found it. Here we are. It's on Kuftet Vav Amid Bet. Amar Shmuel. Okay, Amar Shmuel. Lechem Oni. Now, normally, Oni means poverty in the Torah, right? And Halach Ma'anya, there are also interpretations, Halach Ma'anya. But it's normally translated in English, the bread of affliction. I think a lot of English Haggadahs call it that. Lechem Oni, what does Shmuel have to say? Lechem Sha'oni Malav Dvarim Harbet. Dvarim. This is the bread about which you have to tell a story, right? Because the pasuk says, why are we eating this matzah? Because it's to tell us. Because you left Egypt in a hurry. So you shall always remember Yitziat Mitzrayim. So we could, Lechem Oni is the bread that we talk about once a year. And what are we talking about once a year? How we left Egypt. It's the bread that tells a story. That's Lechem Oni according to Shmuel. It's the bread that tells a story. Okay? It's the bread that tells a story. And he goes on. There are other ideas. Okay, Lechem Shem Dvarim Harbe. Tanya Namer, there's a price that supports Shmuel. Lechem Shem Dvarim Harbe. It's the bread that you tell, you have a big story. Dvarim Harbe, there's a lot to tell in the story of Yitzhak Mitzrayim. The Seder should last a long time. Lechem Shem Love Dvarim Harbe. Dvarim Harbe. You have a lot to say at the Seder. And you should look for things to say at the Seder. Okay, Dvarim Harbe. Davar Achir. And Bryce said, no, there's another idea, Lechem Oni. Lechem Oni, Ani Ksiv. So it's punctuated Oni, which is to respond, to reply, to tell. But it is spelled 3 letters, which also mean ani, poor person. Ani shadarko beprusa. The poor man can't afford a whole loaf of bread. The poor person can sometimes only afford a piece of bread. Afkan beprusa. At Leha Seder, you eat a piece of bread. Normally, and this is, we're going to see in the Rambam, on Shabbos, we buy 2 whole chalot, right? That's our lechem mishnah. And whole chalot, at every meal you have 2 whole chalot. And just like we have it that was the man. On Friday, they got a double portion of man. And Moshe says there's no man on Shabbat. Make sure. And Zecher Laman, same thing on Yom Tov. The man didn't fall on Yom Tov. On Yom Tov also, you have 2 whole chalot. And the Yom Tov of Pesach on the 7th day, the Yom Tov, the 7th day of Pesach, which is also Yom Tov, we will all make hamotzi on 2 whole pieces of matzah. But Leil HaSeder, you don't have a whole matzah. You have a piece of a matzah. Because it's lachem ani. It is the bread of the poor. And the poor person sometimes can't get a whole piece of bread. So you have to have a prusa. And we'll see Rashi. Afkan b'prusa. There's another pshat. Just to finish this off. To avoid chametz, we all know, I think most of there's an idea of 18 minutes. If dough is left unattended for 18 minutes, fermentation begins. That's the process of chametz. Poor people, how they do it, they work fast. Poor people work fast. The husband fires up the oven and the wife bakes. And that way, that's how poor people do it. And there's a lesson there for us that we should make the matzah in a hurry. So there shouldn't be chametz. So we can look at Rashi. Okay. Here there's no Rashi. We go to the next page. Hold on, please. Where did it go? Here we are. Afkan b'prusa. Lavechal chilat matzah. Okay, someone else will be giving, we broke up the Seder for all the teachers in WebYeshiva. Matzah, we'll talk about the person who teaches that class, because on Leha Seder, you have a whole matzah and a piece of matzah, and there are 2 brachos that we say. We say hamotzi, and then we say al chilat matzah. And the different ideas we've shown in which bracha is said on which matzah. But this is Rashi. Afkan b'prusa, lavrech al chilas matzah. The mitzvah of al chilas matzah you do on the prusa, the broken matzah. Which say shemos mentioned bracha motzi. And besides that broken matzah, you have 3 matzahs at the table according to Rashi. You have 2 whole matzahs because of you want to make hamotzi, and there's lechem mishnah. Okay. On Shabbos and Yom Tov, you need whole loaves. So you have 2 whole matzahs, and on that you'll say hamotzi, and al achilas matzah you're going to say on the broken matzah, because madarkal sha'ani b'prusa afkan b'prusa. So that's why we break the matzah. Okay, so far so good. Okay, everyone, so far so good. Yes. You're all good?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, very good. All right. So back. So now when do we break the matzah? The Gemara doesn't say when to break it. When do we break the matzah? So our minhag is to break it, as we saw in that little nice song. I like that song, so play it again. I like music. When do we break the matzah? Let's start again. I just got to rewind. Go back. Here we go again. That's it. That's how the Shulchan Aruch says to do it. That's how the Torah said to do it. That's how most Rishonim said to do it. at the beginning of the Seder. Why? Not making a matzah yet. Why are we in such a hurry to break the matzah? Okay? Now, what we just saw from Shmuel, it's lechem she'onim lav dvarim harbe. It's the bread upon which we're going to tell a story. Well, the story begins with halach ma'anya. So before halach ma'anya, you have to already have the lechem she'onim alav dvarim harbe, which is also a prusa. And that's how the Rishonim put it all together. Okay, so the Ran, the earliest Rishon that we have, who talks about this. Why are you breaking the matzah so early? Okay, this is the Ran in his Parish on the Rif. The Ran's answer is like this. It's for efficiency. The Seder, you have a lot of people, there's a lot of talking, which is good. We have to be unadvarm harbe. So all these little technical things, let's get them over with fast so we can just get into the story part. Break the matzah early. You're going to need a prusa when you get to hamotzi. No, like it is. Everybody does the Yadayim. No one can talk. They're all just sitting there staring. No one's going to talk. Break the matzah. So break the matzah early. Break the matzah over early and get it over with. It's not a very romantic explanation, but it's a pretty functional explanation. We'll see other explanations. Okay, this is the tour. In his Seder, Mikach matzah emtza'it, you take the middle matzah, because we'll see that people only have two matzahs. But a lot of Rishonim say you have three matzahs. Take the middle matzah, which one you're going to break? The middle matzah. Okay, break the middle matzah, right? You have to break a matzah. The Torah says you break the middle matzah. Why the middle matzah? Because there's another Gemara. And here he is. There's a whole machloka. If you have a whole loaf of bread and a piece of a bread, and you like the piece of bread and the whole one, which make the bracha on. Amar of Papa, a kol modim. Rav Papa says everyone agrees. Pesach shemaniach prusa b'toch shleima ubotseya. On Pesach, everyone agrees that you agree. You take the broken matzah, you place it within the whole matzah, b'toch shleima ubotseya, and then you break it again for hamotzi. My time alechem oniksiv. Again, the idea that it's the dark al sha'oni. Poor person only has a piece of bread. So you can say alachilas matzah, the way a poor person would do it, that's on a piece. Now, the matzah that we have these days, like korech means to wrap, which is like worth thinking about. Sfardim, my nephew married a very nice Iraqi girl, and their matzah are basically like the lafot that they eat all year long. Like they're more careful about the chametz issue, but they're soft. So you can actually maniach, you can place the broken one within the whole one. Now, we can't do that. We Ashkenazim can't do that because our matzot are not flexible. But this just shows you that in the times of the Gemara, they were eating lafot. They were eating soft matzah. It just wasn't chametz. So that way you could tear it in half and put the half inside of the hole. It's just an interesting aside. Okay, so for an Ashkenazi, or if you have to have whole, then you put it between the two whole ones. And that's back to the tour. Okay, so you take the middle matzah. That's when you're going to break. Put it between the two whole matzot. And you'll break it in half. The piece, that's what we call the afikoman. Okay, and that's what we do. The half the broken matzah is with the other two whole ones. The broken matzah we call the afikoman, and you place it under the tablecloth. I said in Parshat Bo, when we left Mitzrayim, they were rushed out. They didn't have time for the dough to rise. So it says they took their dough and they put it in bundles in their garments. They put it over their shoulders. And some people do that. And it's nice. It's a very nice minhag. They take the afikoman, they march around the table with it. Okay. And why are we breaking the matzah so early? Okay. Kasava Kolbo. The Kolbo is a Rishon. They used to say he was an Ashkenazi Rishon. Now I've read that some say he was actually from southern France. That's neither here nor there. Haminag lakalka kodem shikra haggadah. The minhag, he says, is to break the matzah before you start reading the Haggadah. Because you have to say halach ma'anya. Mala'ani befusav kan befusa. There. Ani is poor. Halach ma'anya. This is the bread of the poor, the bread of affliction. That's a broken matzah. And that's how the Kolbo saw it. You're going to say halach ma'anya on the broken matzah. That's one pshat. The other reason to break the matzah early is because we want to provoke conversation. And you have little kids, why are you breaking the matzah for? Very good question. That's an opening for the conversation. The Haggadah should be the Haggadah exists in a book. It's true. We should try and read everything from the Haggadah, but it's not a rigid recitation. There is flexibility. It should be conversation. You should be talking, questions, answers, singing. Okay? So it's a funny thing. You break the matzah before you start the meal. What are we doing that for? Let's talk about it. Okay? Another reason, because we eat matzah before the meal, and you have to eat an afikoman after the meal, because in the times of Beit HaMikdash, and prepare remaining, we should have Beit HaMikdash this year, the Korban Pesach was the last thing they ate at the meal. It was al hasova. In other words, first you have your maror and your charosa and your karpas. Then you have your chicken soup with knedlach. If you eat knedlach, I like knedlach in my chicken soup. And then you have other things to eat. In the times of Pesach, Beis HaMikdash, they had a meal based on the Korban Shlamim. At the end of the meal, they ate the Korban Pesach. And Zeicha for the Korban Pesach is the afikoman. And for the many Rishonim, the Rashbam, that was the real mitzvah. The real matzah mitzvah is not the matzah before, at the beginning of the meal, it's the matzah at the end of the meal. Because that's the Zeicha of Pesach. Now we're afraid that if you're just going to eat, you'll eat up all the matzah, right? You eat up all the matzah. They want everything left for the afikoman. So that's why he says the Yeshomrim. So that's another idea. Put away half of the matzah just in case. This way, no one will eat all the matzah up. These are all nice answers. They're good answers from Rishonim. There's another end. There's another pshat. The Rambam. The Rambam Seder, they did not sing this song. I love this song, so I'm going to play it again. Just bear with me. This is the last time we're going to play it. I just like it. Fourth thing in the Seder is Yachatz. Now we can look at the Rambam Seder in Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah. You're already through the entire Seder. You're through Hallel. You've drunk 2 cups of wine. Now what do? You already washed your hands. We already touched them first for the karpas. Now wash your hands again. Why do you wash our hands again? Well, during the Haggadah, you're probably distracted and you scratch yourself, you touch things. You have to wash your hands all over again. Now what do? Shnei Rekikim. For the Rambam and for other Rishonim, it wasn't 3 matzot. There are 2 matzot at Leil HaSeder, not 3. Okay, he'll tell. We'll see why. There are two matzahs. Okay, you take two matzahs. Okay, now you break the matzah in half. Not at the beginning of the Seder, but right before you make hamotzi, you break the matzah in half. And first you take the broken matzah, insert it into the whole matzah, you say hamotzi. Why don't we have two whole loaves or matzahs like we do on other Yamim Tovim? Mishum Shnema lechem oni, because of Shmuel's drasha, it's lechem of oni. Madakal shani b'prusa kan b'prusa. The poor person doesn't have all the time a whole loaf of bread. This is called lechem oni. Do like the poor. That's why we don't have two whole lechem mishnas at Leil HaSeder. And then afterwards we do korech. So the Rambam's Seder is different from our Seder in two respects. First of all, he has two loaves and two matzahs as opposed to three, and he does his Yachatz before Hamotzi, not the beginning of the Seder. That's the Rambam. And already the early Rishonim were puzzled by this. Okay? So this is Rabbeinu Manoach. He's a commentator to the Rambam. He's a Rishon. I mean, again, now, after we read the whole Haggadah, Lechem Matzah, Matzah Mara, Lechem Matzah from Rama Gamliel, Pesach Matzah Mara, we said Halach Ma'anya, we said Hallel, we're going to eat. Now you break the matzah right before you make hamotzi. So Rabbeinu Manoach is the pshat that we already saw in the tour. It's halach ma'anya. This is the bread of poor, of poverty, of affliction. And if the matzot are whole, they don't look like affliction. So we have to break it before we start reading. Kach nahagnu, av b'shein botam ikar. But really, there's no reason to break the matzah before you start reading the Haggadah. Really, the whole time I need the broken matzah is when I make hamotzi. Like, why am I doing this early in the Seder? But two, I know paras lechem oni mikri, and matzah is matzah. The whole point of lechem oni, we're eating lechem oni all week long. And we don't eat broken matzah all week long. So it's not lechem oni because we broke it. And he also mentions the minute that was brought down in the tour, that the afikoman you put underneath the tablecloth, and because that was how we carried our bread our dough out of Mitzrayim, it was wrapped up in a cloth. So that's his pshat. He says it's lechem oni. And I want to say lechem oni before I say halach ma'anya, but really the matzah is lechem oni anyway, even when it's not broken. So, is there another pshat for the Rambam? But it's interesting that the Rambam's Seder was not like our Seder. So I found a nice pshat in a sefer called Gvorot Yitzchak. Sefer Gvorot Yitzchak, Yidush Merma Rambam Hilchot Chametz Matzah, Me'et Avam Yitzchak ben Daniel Rabbeinu Rabbeinu and Banagam Rabbeinu Baruch Sorotzkin. It's a sefer that was published in 2018. And he also wants to give a pshat in the Rambam. And it's an interesting pshat. Okay. All right, that's the Rambam. You take two, a rakikin man is like a way. Take two matzahs, break one in half, put the broken one inside the whole one, you say hamotzi. It is really the Ram, they know cholek apat, ella, b'shas achila. Pshan the Rambam, his Seder was not like our Seder. He does Yachatz before the meal. Shulchan Aruch Chaim Simtafayin Gimel Sefav Yikach Matzah Tzar V'Yitzen L'Shnayim. This we saw in the tour. Our minhag is not like that. We break the matzah before we even start anything at the Seder. That's our minhag. In the Ikar Dina the Yachatz near the Alpia Gemara Brachos Lamatet with Bet Marv Papa Komodim Pesach Tus B'Tach Shem Botzeh Maitam Lachem Oniksiv. The reason that we're doing Yachatz is because that's what Rav Papa said in the Gemara that we saw, that on Pesach everyone agrees you take a half a loaf or half a matzah, insert it into a whole matzah, and say Hamotzi like that. And a reason for this again is in Mani Daka B'Prusa Kamba Prusa. So from these Gemaras, it seems that the whole point of the Prusa is related to how we're going to make Hamotzi at Leil HaSeder. So why are you going to break the matzah in advance of Hamotzi? In the Gemara, the Prusa is linked to Hamotzi, right? Right? Now I have to explain the Shulch our minhag. Why aren't we doing it before Hamotzi? Why are we doing it so far in advance? Why are we breaking the matzah before we start even reading the Haggadah? Again, you look at the Gemara, the whole idea of the broken matzah is linked to Hamotzi. Okay? Because it's lechem oni, and that's when we make the bracha Hamotzi. We make a bracha on the lechem oni. Why are we breaking the matzah so far in advance? Like, what's the rush? Okay. So he has an idea, and I want to share it with you. Okay. It seems to him. It's really din. Lechem oni, go back to Shmuel, it's lechem she'onim alav dvarim harbe. Oni is discussion, not poverty. That word in the pasuk on lechem oni means the bread of discussion. The with dvarim darshin shana matzah dvarim harbe. You can't mention lechem she'etzba dechavas on a prusa b'ina she'eni avagada te'al prusa. So yeah, we have both drushos. Our minhag is like merging two of the drushos from Masechet Pesachim. We go back to Shmuel. Amar Shmuel, lechem oni, lechem shalom dvarim. It's the bread of discussion. And then there's the davar acher, madakal sha'ani shadaka b'prusa, kamber prusa. I want to do both. I'm going to say the mitzvah of al chilas matzah on a broken piece of matzah. The reason I'm going to say al chilas matzah on a broken piece of matzah is because madakal sha'ani b'prusa, of kamber prusa. That's Rashi. Lavarich al chilas matzah. The matzah of mitzvah is the broken matzah. The matzah of lechem mishnah is the hamotzi, not the al chilas matzah. The al chilas matzah is the broken matzah. So that's the matzah. That's the real mitzvah, is the broken matzah, and part of that mitzvah is to talk about it. I'm going to talk about a broken matzah. It's lechem oni because of darkal shalani. And it's also lechem oni, lechem sha'oni malav dvarim harbe. I want to do both. That means if I'm going to read the Seder, I have to have a broken matzah in front of me. And that explains our minhag. That's our minhag. We break the matzah before we even start before we start reading the Haggadah. That explains our minhag. And the Rambam says, you don't need to do that. Okay? Because according to the Rambam, there's another thing. They used to say the Haggadah on in the times ago, they didn't have one big dining room table. Everybody had their own table. And there's a whole thing. We uncover things, we cover things. And in the times ago, they would take the table away and put the table back. And the Rambam held that this is that Gamki Sabuk the Rambam in person, a Padifnikas Agada Olo. The Rambam Tame the mitzvah sipolo tzachos al pat. That's why the Rambam says we don't need to say the Haggadah with the matzahs in front of us. In the days of the Gemara, they would move the table to make the children ask questions. And they didn't put the table back until they're ready to eat. So the matzah wasn't even there according to the Rambam. So the Rambam, that's why the Rambam doesn't think you have to read the Haggadah in front of a broken matzah. My Torah showing lies on my but this Torah and Rashi apparently all say no. The matzah is essential for the Haggadah. Since it's essential, you have to have the broken matzah. And that's what they disagree about. That's why we say the Haggadah over a broken matzah. And the Rambam did not say the Haggadah over a broken matzah. He didn't feel that the matzah was essential for the saying of the Haggadah and telling the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. That's interesting, that there are two different ideas about when this ought to be done. Any questions? No? Okay, we can go on. All right. So, matzah. What's matzah? So you go back to this pasuk in Parshas Re'eh. It's lechem oni, which can either be the bread of poverty or the bread of discussion. If it's the bread of poverty, it's like commemorating the bad part of our existence in Egypt. Or I could say, it's good that we left Egypt, right? Why come we're eating matzah? Because we didn't have time for the bread to bake. Why didn't we have time for the bread to bake? Because Hashem made makat b'charav. We all got chased out of Egypt, which is a good thing. So matzah has like two built-in messages. As a message of lechem oni, and as a message of the nes of Yetziat Mitzrayim. It's like Yom Tzeitcha. I mean, I realize that now. Like, we're not commemorating the bad. We're supposed to remember the good. Remember the day you left Egypt, Yom Tzeitcha. We're not commemorating the slavery. We're commemorating Hashem rescuing us from slavery. So Pesach is like pure good. It's a pure happy day. It's pure happy. It's pure happy. There are days that we mourn. That's Tisha B'Av, right? There are days that are pure sad. Tisha B'Av is pure sad. In our own lifetimes, there's Yom HaShoah, pure sad. Before Yom HaTzmut, there's Yom HaZikaron, pure sad. Pesach has nothing sad in it, apparently, because it's Yom Tzeitcha Meretz Mitzrayim, the day that you left Egypt. It should be pure happy. It should be pure happy. And so you got two things built into it. And this is what the Ramban says about matzah. Ramban from Parshas Ba or A. Okay. Kiska matzah shelechem ani, like ikiyesh sevelska shetzel bechit pazon, ani zech yubitzayim lechem tzarmayim lachatz. So, what are we remembering on Pesach? We have to remember that we left in a hurry. That's a pretty good thing. Hashem made a nace, we got out in a hurry. But the Ramban says he takes the oni as affliction also. The word has many meanings. We have to remember that when we were in Egypt, we didn't have anything to eat. Unlike what our ancestors complained about, that the food in Egypt was so good. They complained about the man. Really, there wasn't anything to eat in Egypt. Lechem tzamayim lachatz. B'nei timos l'shnei dvarim. So matzah has two messages, right? There are two messages in matzah. This is what we ate in Egypt. There's nothing. Matzah is bread, is flour and water. That's our, this year, the whole thing, you'll hear all the halacha shira on what we should eat on Erev Pesach, on this coming, next Shabbos, Erev Pesach, when you can't have chametz. You don't want chametz in your house. You could eat chametz if you want to. But, you have to really, really clean well right after the meal. So people will be eating matzah ashira. And matzah ashira is flour mixed with fruit juice, not with water. So it doesn't become chametz. You can make hamotzi on it. There's a whole other issue. But you can't use that on Leil HaSeder. Ashkenazim don't eat matzah ashira at all. But Sephardim do eat matzah ashira during Pesach. If you live in Israel, there's a cookie company. They only make cookies once a year, Papa Shado. So there are cookies like that. Ashkenazim don't get to eat it. We have to eat, like in America, we ate coconut macaroons. No matzah ashira. But you can't eat that for the Seder, right? Because that's not lachem ani. Not matzah ashira. Okay, just flour and water. No juices, no eggs. And that's it. So matzah has two messages. There's a message of commemorating the misery of Egypt. It also commemorates the fact that we were rescued from Egypt. So you have both. And there's another thing you can ask about, since we're matzah. They ate matzah in Egypt, right? When we left that night of Erev, the first Erev Pesach, they made a korban Pesach in Egypt. They ate matzah before they left, right? Before Yitzhak Mitzrayim, they were eating matzah. That matzah, the grilled korban Pesach with maror. Okay, and then they were commanded, our ancestors were commanded that from now on you're going to make a yantiv without eating chametz for a whole week. And then there's the matzah of the actual leaving. So there are two matzahs. They baked matzahs deliberately because Hashem said, tonight you're leaving. Tonight I want you to eat a korban with matzah. Then there's makat v'chorot. Then they get chased out. Now there's a whole other set of the second set of matzahs. Those are the matzahs that they were chased out and they couldn't wait for the bread. They couldn't wait for the dough to rise. They made some dough. They were going to just bake regular, but the Egyptians said, "Go, go, 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 go! Get out, get out, get out!" So we had to get out. And that's the matzah that we're commemorating in Parshas Re'eh. So why did Hashem tell us to eat matzah before Yetziat Mitzrayim? How come that night we had to eat matzah? The Barbanel has a long comment on this. And he makes this observation. Okay? The reason we ate, Hashem said, eat matzah tonight, before Yetziat Mitzrayim, was that this night should be like every other night in the future. Okay? Hashem told them, bring a korban Pesach. Think about it. Hashem says Pesach, right? Ki Pesachti. But Hashem didn't pass over anything yet. This is before Makat B'chorot. Because that night of the miracle was in preparation for all the korban Pesach that would ever be in the future. It was anticipatory. Okay? But we're here. Hashem wants us to be the first Pesach. From now on, this is going to be a holiday for the Jews. We didn't know Our ancestors didn't know anything. What's going to be tonight? They had a promise from Hashem that tonight you're going to leave. And tonight I want you to eat Pesach, I want you to eat the korban with matzah. What's the rush? Why do they have to bake the matzah so fast? Because that's what you're going to do in the future. This is what's going to be. Hashem is going to pass over the doors. This Pesach that they made at the night was a prefiguration of what's going to be in the future. So how come Hashem couldn't wait with the mitzvah of Korban Pesach and mitzvah of matzah until after all this happens? Why is Hashem doing it before anything happens? Because Hashem felt that he would wait with this mitzvah until after they get out. They wanted to preach. They wanted, wow, didn't we leave in a hurry? So by doing it before the miracle ever happens, it like made the message that much stronger. That's how the Abarbanel sees it. It's an interesting shot that there was a pre-Exodus Korban Pesach, and now we're in the post-Exodus Pesach. But there needed to be a pre-Exodus holiday of Pesach with matzah, with a korban, with maror, because that way this deliverance will be imprinted on our collective memories. Well, I think that's an interesting idea. But the main thing is, that's an interesting idea, and matzah really has two messages in it, like the Ramban says. Timoz shnei dvarim. There's lechem oni, it is the bread of affliction, and it's also celebration bread, that has both. They're both built into the matzah. Any questions?
No.
Okay, we go on. Okay. All right. How come it's not? I'm getting okay. So I just want to leave you with one thing. If you're looking for another book on Korban Pesach, I make a little plug for this. I don't get any commissions for this, but there is a very nice professor at Bar-Ilan University. His name is Professor David Henschke, and he wrote a book called Manishtana. Here it is. And Magnus Press prints it. And it's a wonderful book on Korban Pesach. It's not an easy read. It's very detailed. It's very academic. But if you're looking for ideas on Korban Pesach and the Chag and the Seder, it's a very interesting book. So thank you for your time. No thanks to the Houthis who interrupted the first try of the Shir. Hashem saved us from the Egyptians. Hashem should save us from Hamas, B'ezras Hashem, and from Houthis. And we should have a Geula this year. So bye-bye. Thank you for your time. Thank you for staying with me.
Very much, Rabbi.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you for staying by. Baruch Hashem. Okay.